All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Hoosier Huddle podcast. I'm Sammy Jacobs. Along with me is T.J. Inman. We're back again for another podcast. This time we're talking about basketball, who kind of had a rough week last week with losses at Minnesota and then in Indianapolis against Louisville. We'll look back at that. They returned home to play Penn State and got a historic performance at Lamar Wilkerson, who was just on fire last night. And then coming up this weekend, IU Kentucky rivalry renewed down in Rupp Arena. So let's talk about last week. Indiana opens up Big Ten play. I really don't like these early December Big Ten games. I get why they do them, but man, it really does not feel like a Big Ten game. Like with the importance just this early in the schedule. But Indiana open play at Minnesota. We talked about it being a winnable game, a really can't lose game. Well, TJ, they lost, and they didn't really look great in doing so. So,
Right.
what is the impact now? They went on to lose against Louisville, where they fell behind 16-0, and that was it. Uh, and then lost by 9, so it'll help the metrics and all that stuff. No double-digit loss or whatever goes into all of those. And then they come back and beat Penn State. Lamar Wilkerson just went off last night, hit a program record 10 3-pointers. Scored 44 points on 22 shots. So you really can't get more efficient than that. So let's start with Minnesota, TJ. What did you take away from the Minnesota game?
The most disappointing part was probably the lack of urgency and the general lack of physicality that IU was able to play with. Now, we talked about Minnesota was good at getting to the foul line, so it wasn't a big surprise that Indiana got themselves into foul trouble. That is kind of a consistent issue for the Hoosiers, but the lack of physicality on offense, the finishing around the basket was terrible.
Yep.
Indiana did not do well playing through contact, and they got destroyed on the boards, 40-25, so minus 15 on the glass. Yeah, they had a bad shooting night. That absolutely happened. We thought that was a possibility, given the kind of oddity of shooting at the barn. Williams
Yep.
Arena, road teams typically don't shoot great there because it is such a different environment. Typically pretty cold in there. It's a raised floor. It's kind of a unique backdrop behind the basket. So it's expected that a team would have a little bit of a difficult shooting night, but IU then compounded that by really awful rebounding and really bad finishing around the basket inside of the paint. From a kind of repercussions standpoint, it's one that very likely on Selection Sunday, if Indiana is a bubble team, that's one that might come back to bite you as a quad 3 loss.
Yep. I thought the game changed when Tucker DeVries stole the ball. I don't know if he couldn't get out of first gear I don't know if he can get out of first gear.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he's just so slow. But the defender makes a great hustle play, blocks it. So what would have been a dunk and an 11-point lead and all the momentum, Minnesota gets the block, goes down, gets 2 free throws, and then really cuts the lead to 6.
Yep.
And turns what could have been a blowout. And Indiana did this all night. And really both teams did. They had chances to pull away and put teams away. They didn't do it. Minnesota hung around. They got that big play. Then they go and hit some 3-pointers. IU was not great at the free throw line either. And that was just that's a game you hope is an aberration and not the norm.
Mhm.
So that to me, that's where that whole game changed. You felt pretty good, up by 9. Oh, Tucker got a steal, going in for a big dunk. Minnesota probably takes a timeout there to stem the tide, and you go into your TV timeout, high-fiving and chest bumping, feeling good, pretty good about yourself.
Yep, I think that's a really good point. And I have seen or did see after that game that Tucker was showboating or loafing. I don't think that's the case. I think that he's not at all quick, not per- when I say not quick or not athletic, I mean in Big Ten
Relative
basketball
terms.
standards.
Yes.
Yeah, relative terms, but not particularly athletic by Big Ten standards. I think that he was attempting to time his steps to make sure that he could elevate for that dunk. I also do think it's fair to say, did he go at full speed to make that play? No, I think he was surprised that the defender was there for the block. But yeah, that was a turning point. Indiana was really unable to break through until they did show some fire, gave Minnesota some trouble with the full court press towards the, I'd say probably final 4 or 5 minutes of that game. But it was not enough to complete the comeback. You hope that Indiana does enough the rest of this season that loss does not come back to haunt you. But the games are weighted the same, whether it's in early December, late November, or mid-March. They're weighted the same on your resume. And that's one that I think they will want to have back, particularly as you look around the Big Ten at, the middle to the top of this conference. There are not going to be a lot of road wins out there for the taking. And that's one that you could have had and they were unable to get. It certainly took some of the shine off of the start of the season and brought some doubts into things as they took on Louisville. And I think that when they started as poorly as they did against the Cardinals, it from an emotion standpoint, it certainly felt compounded. And that, we'll pivot to Louisville, fall behind 16-0 against a really good team. And, it really felt like you spent the entirety of the day of that game attempting to dig yourself out of a hole that you didn't have a shovel big enough to.
No, let's say they went down, 12-6.
Yeah.
There were multiple times in that game they got it down to 5 points. A couple times they got it within 8, 9 points. Or if you're not down 16-0, maybe that's a one-possession game. And look, it's all hypothetical, and we're living in SEC world with the hypotheticals. The fact is, you went down 16-0, but you can't take it away, and the game might play out differently if you don't get into that hole. And I'll talk about the start against Penn State when we get there as well. But yeah, Louisville, they play a similar style of game. They just are better at it. And it's 16-0. You just couldn't get back. And every time you had the energy to get it within single digits, it seemed Louisville got back. They pushed it out to 19 or back to 16. And, IU fought, and that's the difference between this team and the Mike Woodson teams the last couple of years, is that Mike Woodson's team probably loses that game by 30, if not more.
We saw it. We saw it in Atlantis, and this is a much better Louisville team than that one was. I think.
And it's a much less talented IU team than that team was, too.
That's
just
probably
raw
fair. Yeah. Having Ryan Conwell be kind of the alpha foil in that game certainly didn't help. That's a player that Indiana did not recruit out of high school. He's from Indianapolis, plays really well at Indiana State, transfers, and IU, again, doesn't really make him a priority in the portal, transfers to Xavier, and then is in the portal, and IU unable to get any traction with him because they'd snubbed him twice before. He goes to Louisville, and really, it's not that he was dominant in that game, but it felt like whenever he needed to do something, he went ahead and did it. And then Isaac McNeely, another player that was in the portal 2 years ago, and Indiana was a potential suitor for him, and the previous coaching staff screwed up that recruitment, didn't get him, and he really made big threes. It was either him or Conwell every time Louisville needed something. I do think a couple of positives from that game. Number one is another guard, this time Mikael Brown, that Indiana was able to make uncomfortable. That's a positive sign. I thought that Connor Enright did a very nice job on Brown.
They just have three really good guards. It's good you can stop one, but usually that's the nice thing about having three awesome guards is that if one is going to get stopped, you have two others to lean on.
Yeah, he's a 5-star freshman that, again, Indiana was involved in his recruitment and didn't end up landing him, obviously. He'll be in the NBA next season. Really good player, big guard. Enright was able to pester him and make him uncomfortable. He got him in foul trouble. That was one positive. The second, beyond just continuing to compete, I thought that Nick Dorn being able to get an extended run, go 5 for 7 from 3, score 15 points. I thought that was a really good sign moving forward. It's clear that he's, and we'll mention it for the Penn State game as well here when we do it, Nick Dorn is becoming a larger part of the rotation with each passing game, clearly getting into game shape, getting more comfortable out there on the court, getting his legs under him. And he's an asset for sure. Really good looking stroke, and he was able to, and a good size as well, with good, frame on him. I think him being able to go against a high major opponent and really look the part and get himself 5 for 7 from 3, that was a positive as well. There's no moral victories. That's not what I'm saying, but there were positives to take from that one. Ultimately, you get it back to a margin that game didn't impact your metrics. The Minnesota game certainly did, but the Louisville one, that ends up being a deficit that was roughly in line with the spread and the expected margin of defeat in this case. I believe it closed at 6.5 in favor of Louisville. Indiana cuts it down to single digits there at the end. And you can feel however you want to feel about how wide of a spread that game actually was in terms of the gap between the two teams. But for the metrics standpoint, Indiana was able to battle back and get it to where it wasn't damaging. And that's from a perception standpoint. I do think it was damaging just because of how ugly it was early. That I do think skeptics
watch the game. It's different than you glance at the box score.
Yeah,
they lost by 9. It's a close game. No,
and if you're in
control all game,
and if you're a fan that is inclined to be in wait and see mode, or is just, hey, I'm out on basketball, I'm out on this program, until they do something to get me back. If that's who you are as a fan, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but if that's who you are, Saturday was probably one of the games you would check back in, say, all right, what do we got here? Oh, 16-0. Yeah, I'll just turn this off and go find something else to do with my time, and I'll check back in mid-January after football.
Yeah, next Saturday against Kentucky.
Maybe so. Yeah.
So let's move past Louisville. Last night, IU comes home. They play Penn State, who somehow entered the game 8-1.
Nice schedule.
They are not a good team, but IU played the way they wanted to play. And we'll talk about Nick Dorn. Again, he played 25 minutes against Penn State after playing 16 against Louisville.
Yep.
And his time is getting increased, which is fantastic. And then you have Alexa Ristic, who's coming back from an injury as well. He got in last night. But if you look at Lamar Wilkerson's the story of the game. And the start here, I mentioned it on the boards. People are like, oh, they have energy. The crowd is up. Yeah, well, they started the game shooting like 78% from the field. And anytime, I don't care if you're playing at the Y or in TJ, your CYO league, if you're hitting 75% of your shots, you get a little extra pep in your step. You're like, all right, let's go. And Lamar Wilkerson started off red hot, had 20 points in the first half, finishes with 44, sets a program record for three-pointers made with 10. He was 10 of 15, which has been unheard of from an IU basketball team, let alone single player basketball team in a long time. Then Tate Connerway chips in 17. Tucker had an off night a little bit with 12. Reed Bailey at 18. Nick Dorn added 13 on 5 of 7 shooting. It was just a very good offensive night for IU, and they turned a lot of points, turnovers into points too on the defensive side of the ball. Early on, I think Penn State had 5 turnovers. Indiana scored 11 points off of those turnovers, and that's a really good clip. I was actually at Assembly Hall last night because they had Mendoza there for his Heisman finalist interviews. So, I stuck around for the first half because these stupid 8:30 games end way too late, and I'm not staying around for the 11th question so I could repeat, how does it feel to hit 10 3-pointers? It feels awesome. The crowd wasn't what it was what I expected it to be. Kind of the wait and see mode. There was no real buzz in the building pregame. Now it is Penn State, but for a Big Ten opener, it wasn't the usual buzz. There's a lot of empty seats in the balcony, which is, it happens everywhere. And I'm not going to destroy IU or tell fans how to spend their money and all that stuff. But, when the game got going, when it was clear that Lamar was going to have a special night, IU fans do what IU fans do, got into the game, were loud, cheered, and all those things. So, it was a good bounce back win. You needed it. This was again, a can't lose. It would have been a quad 4 loss or quad 3 loss at home, which would be absolutely killer.
At minimum quad 3, and depending on how Penn State does throughout the Big Ten season, which, spoiler alert, won't be good. I could see that slipping down to a quad 4 game. Regardless, it was one you could not fool around with. And IU absolutely did. And that game closed at, I believe, 15.5 as the spread. Indiana, said goodbye to that in the first half with a 30-4 run. Led it by, I think, 32.
They were up by 40 at some point.
32 was the high point in the first half. 49 was the high point in the second half. They were up by 49 points. in the second half. Obviously, Lamar Wilkerson, that is the type of performance that if you watched it, you're not going to forget that.
No, that's one of those nights, it's why you go to sporting events. You never know what you're going to see, no matter what the expectations of the teams are, and whatever. It's that random night at Assembly Hall where you just don't know what you're going to see. It could have been Penn State guy goes off for 44 points. It's a really special performance for them. But you saw Lamar Wilkerson make history at Assembly Hall. That's why people spend money on sports tickets. That's why people tune into the games. It's maybe you get to see something special. It doesn't happen all the time. But on those, when it does, it's okay. I know where I was for this game. I remember texting all my friends and all that stuff. And that was one of those games. Hey, remember when Lamar Wilkerson was almost literally on fire at Assembly Hall? 10 of 15. Yeah, man, that was awesome. We were over at Nick's. We were in the stands. We were watching on TV.
Yeah.
It's
44 points on 22 shots in 24 minutes. That is insane. If Lamar Wilkerson or Darren DeVries had, I'm sure Lamar wanted to, but if Darren DeVries had chosen to do so and Wilkerson would have played, say, 32 minutes, he easily goes over 50 and probably gets close to like 56. I mean, just a remarkable performance from him. And it wasn't particularly shot hunting either. I thought he was taking good shots
too.
Yeah, and he was taking good shots.
Yeah, one of my knocks on Lamar was you got to finish at the rim, and not just him, the entire team. And last night, Lamar, he went on a personal 11-0 run in the first half that spurred that 30-4 run. And he was, and it wasn't all threes. There was an and one, there's a dunk, there's a layup. Once you start hitting those threes and having people come out and guard you, he could hit them in people's faces, but he could also drive around you, get to the rim. But it was good to see him finish on those plays as well, where, a couple games in the past at the rim, he might get fouled, but he's clanking them off the rim or high off the backboard, and they just don't go in. It was good to see that. It's good to see the people coming back from injury. We talked about Nick Dorn. Alexa Ristic comes back as well. He didn't play against Louisville. He played against Minnesota, but he played 7 minutes last night, coming back from a foot injury, hit a three, had 3 fouls. That's another thing this team needs to stop doing is fouling. I know it's easier said than done. A lot of it has to do with moving your feet and not reaching, but getting Dorn and Ristic back. Yeah, it's not gonna be like you're gonna get a 7-foot big dude back who's just a rebounding monster, but for the rest of the season, now you've got 2 guys who could play, and that you would think once they're ready physically will be trusted to play some important minutes. And Nick Dorn is getting there. He is. I don't know if this is going to be his role or if there's more to it, but he is now, getting major minutes. Another thing last night, TJ, Sam Alexis with the start over Reed Bailey. What do you think of that?
I thought it was necessary. I thought that they did need to make a change, given how slow they came out of the gate. Really, a lack of urgency against Minnesota, and how obviously slow they came out of the gate against Louisville. And that was the logical change to make, is Alexis, for the most part, had played better than Reed Bailey thus far in the season. Now, Bailey's had his moments, and one of them was last night. I thought that Bailey responded very well to coming off the bench. He ends up playing more minutes than Alexis does, and I thought really looked good. He was physical around the rim. He had a number of plays in the first half, including a stretch where he had a block, Nice help side block. He had back-to-back possessions where he was really strong on defense in the post and stood up the opposing Penn State player, preventing a basket from being made, and had a bucket on the other end. He ends up a perfect day from the field, 6 for 6 from the field, 6 for 6 from the line, 18 points for Reed Bailey to go with. Trying to remember how many rebounds. 5 rebounds for Bailey. So solid performance from him. I thought Tatum Connerway did a nice job of picking his spots. He's really the one guy on this team, and maybe Nick Dorn can be a second, that can make a play off the dribble and get to the basket on his own. And we saw that from Connerway. That was good to see. He also knocked down a couple threes of his own. So Connerway played well. Sisley led the team in rebounds. He continues to be a positive force off the bench. It was a really good overall team effort. They forced Penn State, who had only averaged 8 turnovers per game. Coming into this, they forced them into 14. And it could have been more than that if they would have kept up the defensive pressure throughout the game. And rebounding as well. They came out on top on the glass. So really nothing to nitpick at all. It was a positive confidence builder for Indiana. They had to get an impressive win. They did so. Bumps them up in KenPom from 29 back up to number 21. Coincidentally, number 20 is Kentucky.
Yeah, let's get into that Kentucky game. Indiana has not played Kentucky since 2016. This is one of the big wins in the Mike Woodson era, was getting this game back on the schedule. And I think everybody half jokingly said there was no way that Woodson and Calipari would coach all 3 of these games, and now neither of them are going to coach in any of these games.
Yeah.
So to me, look, I come from New York, and the Indiana-Kentucky rivalry was kind of off the radar for me. You know, you knew IU Purdue, but you didn't really know the IU-Kentucky rivalry until I got to Bloomington, and it is a big one. But they haven't played in about a decade, which, like anything, really hurts a rivalry, even though the rivalry is alive on social media. You know, it is Indiana's won 2 out of the last 3. You know, starting with the Watt shot, and Kentucky got their revenge in the Sweet 16 later that year, 102-90. Indiana then goes and beats them in the second round to go to the Sweet 16 in 2016 with Tom Crean. Kentucky leads the all-time series 32-25, but they have not played since 2016, and they have not played in Rupp Arena since 2010. And that was a 81-62 victory for Kentucky. Kentucky's won 4 out of the last 6. So where do you stand on this rivalry? I like that they brought it back. I like games on campus. I do also for college basketball when they played at the Freedom Arena, Freedom Center, or Freedom Hall. That's what it is. Freedom Hall in Louisville.
Freedom Hall in Louisville. Yep.
And then the RCA Dome in Indianapolis.
Right.
Now, both of those places don't really exist anymore. RCA Dome doesn't. I think Freedom Hall still does, but they don't really host anything.
Right.
Having the split crowd was awesome. That's one of the rivalry games that if you play in a neutral site like Indianapolis or in Louisville is acceptable. Having it on campus is fun, and it's always fun to have games like that on campus, but it was a really unique rivalry game to where the crowd is really split 50-50, and then you had the red and the blue really clash together and make it a good visual as well.
Yep. You asked where I stand on it. I'm really glad it's being played. I think it should be held every season. I don't like to speak ill of others, particularly when they do not have a chance to defend themselves, but I don't like Kentucky. I can't stand Kentucky basketball. And that's as much as I will say on that before I get ranting and get myself into trouble. I really want Indiana to show up in this game.
Yep.
They have to get off to a good start. As you said, this is a campus game. It is at Rupp Arena. That is a team right now that is searching for themselves. That fan base does not have very much belief in this group currently. There was a lot of hope entering this season, and that got ratcheted up when they beat Purdue in an exhibition game at Rupp Arena. It was, oh, wow. We thought we were going to be good. We might be better than we thought. And that really got, ratcheted up. And then they put up 107 points against Valparaiso and went into a matchup against Louisville at the Yum Center with a ton of hope. And then Louisville scored 96 and Kentucky lost. It was more competitive than Indiana versus Louisville was, but Louisville handled them.
Yep.
And that sort of raised some questions. They beat Eastern Illinois, scored a bunch of points on them, and then took on another major conference opponent, Michigan State, and they got housed.
Yeah, hammered.
Yeah, and it was, oh man, okay. And they beat up another couple of poor opponents, lower class opponents, and then took on North Carolina. And this was at home at Rupp Arena. And they lost. Close game, but they lost. And then they took on Gonzaga in Nashville and got obliterated. An embarrassing performance for them.
That game wasn't even, it was almost it was a 35-point loss, and it wasn't even that close.
It was a whole lot like what Indiana's games in the Bahamas were last season, where it was, are these guys even remotely interested in being out there? And Bruce Pearl, who was doing the game as an analyst, the former Auburn coach, Bruce Pearl, he called out the Kentucky players and Mark Pope and said, look, it is time to have one-on-one conversations with these guys and remind them that playing for the name on the front of the jersey when it's Kentucky, that means something. Those are questions and the types of comments that we heard from IU fans and from TV analysts the past few years with the kind of disinterest that was there from the group that IU had at the time, right? It was, hey, that's a proud program. It means something to play for the name on the front of the jersey. They need reminded of that. And that's kind of what Kentucky's going through right now. They are searching for some positive things to hold on to, and they've been really good against way overmatched opponents. They've been really bad against power conference teams. So you've got that backdrop coming into it, and then you have Indiana, which has had better success against some of the lower level power conference team they've played, Kansas State, Marquette, Penn State, but have also had a couple of stinkers out there, the Minnesota game and the first half against Louisville, really the first 10 minutes against Louisville. So I think both teams are still wondering what exactly are we. And I think that if Indiana can jump out to a good start, there is a real chance that it goes from being an asset that the game's in Rupp Arena to it being a negative for Kentucky.
Yeah, because they were getting
toxic.
They were getting
pretty
booed
quick.
off they were getting booed off the floor in Nashville against Gonzaga at halftime.
Yeah.
Loud boos.
Yeah.
And not because of a bad call or anything, because they were getting their tails kicked.
A perceived lack of effort. Right?
Yeah,
perceived lack of pride and interest.
Kicked it's a de facto home game. Gonzaga's coming from the West Coast, playing in Nashville, which is essentially a home game for Kentucky, and they no-showed.
Yeah.
So, We'll see that game. Let's give people the information on that game, TJ, so they know where to find it. Game is on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. on ESPN.
That's right.
So
ESPN, the rare
no.
Big Ten game on ESPN, because it's
Yeah,
in
so
an SEC arena.
IU fans, you're gonna have to suck it up unless you want to listen to Don on the radio and tune in and give your eyeballs to the mouse and ESPN. So, but then again, you're gonna have to do that for the playoff as well for college football. TJ, what else is on the horizon for IU basketball? You're coming up to a little bit of a break here. With Kentucky on Saturday, you don't play for another week until Chicago State.
Right.
And then you have Siena before you get back into Big Ten play on January 4th. So really between December 20th and the January 4th, you have 2 games at home with no students on campus. I'm not 100% sure that students got tickets to that Washington game, but usually, at least when I was a student, there was always that weekend game before you return that you got tickets to try to get you back on campus. But take us through to the new year with IU basketball.
Right. So this Kentucky game, it's a quad 1 opportunity for Indiana. Almost certainly will stay that throughout the year. So it's a big chance. 1, it's a rivalry. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs on it. 2, you need to have a better showing than what you had against Louisville. It's a winnable game. Kentucky is more talented. They're more athletic. But there's a lot of reasons for optimism to think that IU could go and be really competitive. You have to figure out a way to slow down Ortega Owe, who is the leader for that Kentucky team. And it's, I think, coming off of this Penn State game where Lamar Wilkerson obviously got into a rhythm, I think it's important for Indiana to have at least 2 of their primary scoring options, whether that's DeVries, Connerway, Sam Alexis, Reed Bailey, Nick Dorn, whoever. They've got to have at least 2 of those guys have really good first halves to get off to a nice start. After that game, you've got bye games against Chicago State, who is not good. Siena, a little better, but still games you'd expect to win. Needing to hit Christmas break, I imagine the players will get a chance to go home, as IU has from the December 22nd through January 4th with no game. So a perfect scenario would be you beat Kentucky, you get yourself a quad 1 win, a massive, I think, perception shift from the Indiana fan base, the skeptics that are out there that are understandably waiting to get emotionally invested in this basketball program right now. You go to Rupp Arena and figure out a way to beat Kentucky, I think a lot of people will say, okay, I'm paying attention. All right.
Yeah. Not because Kentucky is great, but because it's Kentucky.
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot of people who are invested in that rivalry, who have watched this program for a long, long time, who might, like you said, be on the outside, kind of taking peeks in. And, that if you beat Kentucky, it's okay. Now I could start talking smack at the water cooler again. On the message boards, wherever, you do it, you're kind of putting, you're starting to write checks that you care about to your friends in terms of trash talking, not actual checks.
Plus, after that, you can carry that momentum into those 2 bye games, get those 2 wins, and feel really good about yourself over the Christmas break. And
heading into the Rose Bowl, and you could talk smack about Indiana basketball at the Rose Bowl. And then you have,
Washington and Maryland.
Maryland on the road is tough.
It is, but Maryland very winnable. Washington's very winnable. Nebraska after that, very winnable. And you'll want to take care of business because it gets much tougher after those games. But I think it's a big opportunity on Saturday night for Indiana. Not a game you're expected to win, but one that you really could go and win. And if you do, again, I think it's a big perception shift for your program.
Yeah, you start to get those fans back, at least for a couple weeks. And then, you're starting to build some equity within the fan base, get people hooked again. And by the time January and February rolls around, football will be over. And you're starting to talk about March Madness and maybe being a bubble team. And is this team in? And you're interested again. So to me, the big game to see where this fan base is Nebraska. It's a Saturday game. I know it's at noon, but it's a Saturday game with students on campus. Nebraska's not, the wholesale, but they have come in. No, they don't have Tsonga or whatever his name is dropping bombs at Assembly Hall.
Yeah.
He was so fun to watch. Dropping bombs at Assembly Hall, but they've come in there and beat Indiana in the recent past, and that game, we'll see what the buzz is like at Assembly Hall during those games and things like that. But yeah, Kentucky, we do it for football all the time. It's one of those pivot games to where your season could get on the right track or your season could go down the wrong track.
Sure.
Luckily with basketball, you have 2 bye games after that, but it is one that, the boost you could get from beating Kentucky can boost you forward a little bit further. So, all right, TJ, let's get out of here. So thanks for listening to the Hoosier Huddle podcast. Basketball sitting at 8-2, 1-1 in the Big Ten. They have a big game against Kentucky Saturday night at 7:30. Go find your favorite place in Bloomington to watch it. I know Heartworks is going to do a watch party for the Rose Bowl, but they'll probably do something for Kentucky as well. And enjoy it. Keep coming back to HoosierHuddle.com. We'll have you covered on all IU sports. Our Bill Connolly podcast from yesterday is now up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. We'll put the video up here on YouTube in a few hours. But awesome talking to Bill Connolly yesterday, TJ. Really insightful. Talked about his new book, talked about IU football, talked about how he comes up with everything and the future of college football. So tune into that. That's up on the site now. And then, of course, we got the Heisman Trophy ceremony is kind of at the same time as this is a good dual screen day with IU Kentucky and the Heisman Trophy going on at the same time. So lots of eyeballs for the Mouse and ESPN. Tune in. We'll have it all covered. We'll talk to Signetti this afternoon in his Heisman Trophy ceremony press conference as well. I talked to Mendoza last night. So lots of good stuff. Keep coming back to the boards. And our Bowl Mania will drop. Michael Pollan was our champion of the regular season pick'em. TJ's hot start did not last, which was expected. And then Michael Pollan just pulled away. And I missed a couple week picks and was late getting them in. But I did tie with him on losses. So in the loss column, we were even, but he had more wins. But yeah, Bowl Mania. It's going to be standard bowl pick. I'm going to pick all the bowl games, $10 buy-in. Winner gets half of it. I'll put out all the information on social media today or tomorrow. Bowls start on Saturday, best time of the year. So we got a ton of stuff on Saturday and then a lot of games to get you through the work week and heading into the holidays. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. TJ, we'll see you out at the Rose Bowl.
Absolutely. Cannot wait.